And that's when it hit me. It was like this really vivid imagery of like this car that was like driving towards like this storm. But there's one thing you need to do right now is you need to learn how to live slow and move fast. And I love how MLK said that it isn't so important how long you live. The important thing is how well you live. Hello everybody, welcome to the Chasing Lightning podcast, where we have conversations on living slow, moving fast, and starting things so that you can do it sustainably. And I'm your host, Caleb Murado, and welcome to the first ever episode. So if you've been with me on this journey, you know that this has been coming, but if not, I should probably tell you about who I am a little bit. So I'm a software finance student minoring in entrepreneurship at the American University. I know there are like dozens of American universities out there. This is the one that's in DC. I'm Bolivian and Guatemalan, and if there are any Bolivians and Guatemalan out there, just let me know. I'd love to hear your story. I'd love to know more about who you are. And some of my roles, aside from student and podcaster, even saying podcaster, that's something I gotta get used to. I was a former investment fund analyst. I used to write a newsletter, which led to the creation of this podcast. I'll talk a little bit more about that in future episodes. I'm an Arctic Monkeys fan. If you had to ask me what my favorite Arctic Monkeys album is, it's for now probably Tranquility Base. That was a really good album. I think it's what got me into them too. And communicator. I love communication, and I believe that the future belongs to the communicators. So today, special for a couple of reasons. Of course, the release of this podcast is one of them, but also because it's my younger sister's birthday. So Elizabeth, happy birthday. Love you. But it's also Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. So Martin Luther King was one of the most important visionaries, leaders, and movement makers in human history. And he said something that I believe really resonates with what I'm trying to do through this podcast. So let me just provide some context of what was going on during this interview and behind this question. So here's the backdrop. So there were two wars happening at the time that was happening right when this question was asked. There was a war in Vietnam, and there was also a war on poverty that was happening because there was some severe economic inequality happening in places in the north, like in Chicago. So the question was, when you stood that August day on the Lincoln Memorial, you said, I had a dream. Did that dream envision a war in Asia and in the ghettos of the north? And here's Dr. King's answer. No, but I must confess that dream that I had that day has in many points turned into a nightmare. So October 23 last year, I was at the gym, right? I don't remember what particular day it was. Maybe it was I think it was a Monday. And I was just locked in. Usually when I'm at the gym, like it's my time, I give myself permission to be like, okay, I can listen to a podcast. I can listen to like a self-help book, whatever. I need to give myself permission to just like let my imagination run loose. And that's usually what's happening at the gym. Like I'm just like locked in. I'm giving my mind a room to like expand and to breathe. And while I was doing like a set of, it was bench press. I remember just like finishing that last rep. I was just resting, and that's when it hit me. It was like this really vivid imagery of like this car that was like driving towards like this storm. And there was like lightning bolts just like striking like around that storm area. And I thought that was like the most like strangest thing, right? Because I could see it so vividly. And I thought, like, who would do that? Because that's really dangerous. I'm not sure if I would do that. And more strangely enough, I remember seeing like two people in that car. So it wasn't just like one person just going right into it. It was two people that were going into it. And I thought, who else would be crazy enough to do that, right? One person, that's already crazy, but two people are kind of pushing it. So that's what got me into this conversation about one phrase, chasing lightning. And that's when I started to really pick apart what that meant for me, right? What that looked like in the grand picture of my life. And even more, like, how would I bring others along for that ride? Because that, I don't know, you had to find some very interesting people who would be willing enough to go do that. If you invite me to go do something like that, I wouldn't be that convinced it would be the best idea. But this whole conversation about chasing lightning happened after October 23 of last year. I remember that because I journaled. Like, I had this really strange image in my mind while I was at the gym today, and I have a feeling it's going to come into play. I just don't know how. So that's what started the conversation on chasing lightning. Okay, so now that we immerse ourselves into the world of chasing lightning and where it came from, let's talk about some lightning facts. So, did you know there are about 100 lightning strikes per second on the Earth? I can tell you that none of those are probably happening in DC. Lightning kills about an average of 48 people each year in the United States. My goodness, may they rest in peace. The energy from this is interesting. The energy from one lightning strike could power an 100-watt light bulb for 3 months. Now imagine we could find a way to take that lightning and to harness it into our homes, and I think that would be really amazing. Here's another one. Lightning often strikes the same place repeatedly. So there's like a phrase that like lightning doesn't strike the same place twice. Apparently that's not very true. So last fact, in reality, when we choose to start big things, we are also choosing to chase lightning. And if lightning represents like overwhelming raw energy and power, like it can literally light a light bulb for 3 months, then how come when we chase it, we feel tired? We feel depleted. We don't feel like we're there for life. We feel like we're unable to rest. And our internal world and soul feel suffocated as a result. And I've been trying to chase lightning for, as long as I can remember in my teenage years. So my mom's an entrepreneur, and I've been raised around entrepreneurs for most of my life. And so being around these people, going to business conferences and seeing the things that they're building, seeing the things that they're scaling, and eventually I got immersed into the investment world. And then I discovered what it's like to do value investing. I remember reading Benjamin Graham's The Intelligent Investor and knowing the power of investing and then going into that and trying to invest and then finding out that's what I wanted to do. I went to college and I became a finance major. And still I tried starting things, tried starting businesses, tried starting like platforms. I started a newsletter and it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. And as a result, there's usually the same outcome. I fell behind, felt tired, and then felt lost. So it wasn't until I went to a conference that happened in October that I had a conversation with a creative director for this place called Mosaic. Shout out to David Arcos. And he sat down with me and he told me something that completely changed the way of what I thought my journey looked like for the past 7 years. And he said, Caleb, there's one thing you need to do right now is you need to learn how to live slow and move fast. And when he told me that, I was like, well, what does that even mean? And he put it this way, right? Imagine you can get to one destination. I don't know, like I live near a Costco, and you can take the highway to the Costco that I live nearby. But the thing is that if you take the highway, you take like maybe 30 minutes. But if you take like an alternative road to the Costco with more stop signs, you're going to get there in less than 30 minutes. It's just that you have to take more stops along the way. Same destination, 2 different routes. One is faster than the other, but takes longer. The other one takes shorter, but it feels a lot longer. And he said, if you learn how to live slow in life, then you will end up moving faster than others. And I thought that is so fascinating. And I think that's something that I just sucked at doing because I am someone who's like wired to live fast. I think that there's like a ambitious and visionary streak in who I am. So naturally, I'm just going to try to find out how to shortcut as many things as I can. But one thing I realized is that when you're trying to live slow, you can't shortcut character. And that's what I really lacked. So this leads to the conversation of the 3 principles, which is live slow, move fast, and start things. Because living slow has a lot to do with character. Moving fast has a lot to do with speed. And starting things has a lot to do with courage. And that's when I realized that if I wanted to do what I'm doing, either through this podcast or even through something I wanted to start in the future, sustainably, I need to learn how to ingrain those 3 principles into my life. And one of the things that I've learned as I started to tap into these 3 principles is that a shift starts to happen where we start to harness from the big thing that we're chasing instead of hating it and ourselves for the nightmare that we've created. So this leads me to talk about what are going to be the main topics of our conversation in this podcast. And there are 3 things. The first of which is character and health. Second being lessons from me or from others that have started like really big things. We're talking about movements, influential research, startups, businesses, podcasts, brands, whatever. And I've got friends and a lot of people that I wish would invite onto this podcast. And this is going to be the fun part. I'm excited to have these conversations with others, even though there's some things that I have learned as well that I'll be sharing. But really, this is where I'll have the chance to invite guests that are going to be able to speak on these things more than I can. And the last thing being just what's going on in the cultural conversation that is going to matter for the future, whether it's in AI. I like to look a lot into Silicon Valley news, so we're going to talk about that, but things that really matter for the future that is going on in the cultural conversation. And the release schedule for the podcast is going to be bi-weekly, so every 2 weeks there's going to be a new podcast episode that'll go up. It could be a guest interview or it could be solo. And I want to also say that the 2-week schedule is also going to be there because during the semester, the workload is definitely going to keep on stepping up. And I want to give myself the space so that my creative energy can go towards creating the highest quality content possible for you guys. Finally, I just want to give a shout out to the people that have been with me for my journey, even throughout the newsletter period. I think one of the biggest things I have gotten from that have been a gain in my life has actually been the community that's been formed out of it. And I want to say that the podcast is meant for the people that are the visionaries, are the movement makers, are the people who are really building the future. And I wanted to create a space where the conversations that can be had will resonate on the level of people that are in college and have studied these really big things and are having the same conversations I was having and am still having today. And I love how MLK said that it isn't so important how long you live. The important thing is how well you live. And I hope that as we keep on going deeper and deeper into this journey of chasing lightning, that as we begin to build that inner infrastructure of character and health and expand that it starts to bring more and more wellness into every facet of our being and of our journey, whatever thing that we started. And I can't wait to go into this journey in each of these future podcast episodes with you guys. I know that if you've been watching the video, it's been getting progressively darker and darker. And in Virginia, whenever it goes past 4, the darkness just started to go down dramatically, and I had my window open in front of me. So if you've been noticing that, that's probably why. So that's it for today's podcast episode. If you find at least one thing that was helpful, insightful, or useful in today's episode, share it with someone who's like you today. They'll probably find it helpful too. Feel free to like, subscribe, leave a rating or review. Each of those things help the platform a ton, and I would be extremely grateful for your help. And I can't wait to see you guys again in the next episode. Peace.